Good morning. I declare open the third plenary meeting. Before we continue the consideration of agenda item 7, general debate, it is a privilege to stand before you today as we gather for an important occasion, the signing ceremony of an agreement between Poland and the International Criminal Court on the enforcement of sentences. This agreement marks a significant milestone in our collective efforts to uphold international justice. I would like to begin by extending my sincere gratitude to Poland. By signing this agreement, Poland is demonstrating a firm and unwavering commitment to the court, to the Rome Statute system, and to the principles of accountability and justice that lie at the heart of our shared mission. The enforcement of sentences is a crucial aspect of the court's mandate. For the International Criminal Court to be effective, it must have the necessary support of its states parties to ensure that sentences are carried out. Without the cooperation of states like Poland, the court's efforts to carry out its mandate effectively would remain incomplete. Today's signing reinforces the importance of this cooperation, not only for the court, but for the broader international community, as it sends a clear message that accountability for the most serious crimes cannot be and should not be negotiable. As we gather here today, I take this opportunity to call on other states to follow Poland's lead. We need more states to enter into similar agreements with the court to ensure the full enforcement of sentences handed down by the ICC. This will not only strengthen our pursuit for justice and the international rule-based order, but also provides greater assurance to the victims and survivors of atrocities that justice will ultimately be served.
Before we move on to the official signature, I would just like to invite the co-facilitators for cooperation, His Excellency Mr. François Lebrun of France and Her Excellency Madame Moutataye of Senegal, to share their remarks on this important development. So I would now call on the co-facilitators to take the floor.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam President. Distinguished Deputy Minister, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I think that it is a good idea to start today's proceedings with some good news, to wit, the signing on the execution of sentences between the ICC and Poland. As one of the co-facilitators on cooperation, along with my colleague from Senegal, we are particularly pleased because throughout the entire year, as part of this facilitation, we were tireless in encouraging the states parties to sign such voluntary agreements for cooperating with the court, and that these agreements would focus on provisional or definitive release from detention, on relocalization and protection of witnesses and victims, and also including the execution or the enforcement of sentences handed down by the court. And I would say that the signing of this agreement today is just one additional sign of Poland's commitment in supporting the International Criminal Court. This support has come in many forms, with the election and the presence of a remarkable judge from Poland who was the president of the ICC, and I would like to say a special word of tribute to that person's service. And also we see this in the energetic support of our colleague, the ambassador of Poland, and in particular in leading the discussions of the Hague Working Group. And also we see Poland's constant reminders of the obligations that it has undertaken in order to uphold the safety of the officials of the court during their terms. And this is just a short list of many things where Poland has been extremely active. This cooperation with states parties falls within the framework of the statute, and it is indispensable for all of the phases of investigations and proceedings in the court. And this includes, of course, the enforcement of sentences of those found guilty. Let me just add that another state party, Latvia, is also gearing up for finding a similar agreement with the ICC in the area of cooperation for enforcement of sentences. And we're very pleased about that in advance. And, Madam President, I would just like to take this opportunity to encourage all states parties to reach this type of agreement with the court. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. Madam Ambassador, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, Deputy Minister, Excellencies, distinguished guests, following what Francois, my colleague, has just said, I would also like to express my great pleasure at seeing this ceremony where Poland and the ICC will be signing a cooperation agreement. As you know, it's a great pleasure for us to find out that Poland has renewed and indeed enhanced its support to the ICC and everything that the ICC stands for us, especially when it comes to justice and the combating impunity. In fact, Poland has just made a major step forward in signing this agreement with the ICC. Senegal congratulates Poland on its steadfast, permanent commitment to upholding the principles of international criminal law and helping the ICC to address the crimes that are brought before it. And this is, in fact, something that we all hope to see occur in the future. Now, the timing for signing of this, it couldn't be more fitting. It's happening at this session of the ACP, and we hope that as such it will stand as a deterrent for against future crimes, and will also encourage other countries to follow suit. Thank you.
I invite the Undersecretary of State of Poland, Her Excellency Maria Echard, and the President of the Court, Tomoko Akane, to come to the stage to sign the agreement. I would now like to give the floor to the Undersecretary of State of Poland, Her Excellency Maria Eckhardt.
Thank you very much. Madam President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I'm extremely honored to have signed the agreement of the enforcement of the sentences of the International Criminal Court on behalf of my government of Republic of Poland. Ongoing conflicts and crises around the globe where serious international crimes might have been committed highlight the critical role of the ICC in upholding international justice. The need for cooperation with the court has perhaps never been so crucial as it is today. The states parties have a shared responsibility for cooperation with the court, and this particular agreement on the enforcement of the ICC sentences is essential for the court to achieve its objectives. As the court's caseload increases, so does the need for voluntary cooperation, which enables the court to fulfill its mandate. We do want the conclusion of this agreement to indicate that the Republic of Poland fulfills its international obligations, particularly in the area of prosecuting and punishing international crimes. Let it also be tangible proof of the steadfast support of Poland extended to the court and the Rome Statute system. By entering into this agreement, Poland demonstrates its unwavering commitment to ensuring the proper functioning of the court. Madam President, let me conclude by conveying the appreciation for the smooth cooperation with the ICC presidency during the negotiations. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the President Akane and her excellent team. I would also like to acknowledge the role of the former President of the Court, Judge Hofmański, under whose term of negotiation started. I thank you.
I thank the Undersecretary of State of Poland, Ms. Eckhardt, for her statement, and now give floor to the President of the Court, Judge Tomoko Akane.
Your Excellencies, Undersecretary of State, President Kaukoranta, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure to address this plenary on the occasion of the signing of an agreement on the enforcement of sentences between the International Criminal Court and the Republic of Poland. The enforcement of sentence is a crucial element of a well-functioning and complete criminal justice system. Enforcement agreements are a powerful tool for state parties to show their support for the court and for its everyday operations. As the activities of the court are expanding and more cases are litigated before the court, more than ever, the court encourages state parties to send a strong message that they are ready and willing to show active support for all aspects of the court's proper functioning. In enforcing sentences, the court is entirely reliant on the voluntary cooperation of state parties, including by concluding framework agreements with the court. To date, such framework agreements have entered into force with 14 states. These framework agreements do not require a state to accept a specific sentenced person. They indicate a state's general willingness to act as a state of enforcement and consolidate the obligations and responsibilities of enforcement states, which all state parties have already agreed to in the Rome Statute and its rules of procedure and evidence. It is my hope that out of 124 state parties, more will come forward to conclude a framework agreement on the enforcement of sentences with the court. A broader geographic range of states will ensure respect for the principle of equitable distribution amongst state parties, enshrined in Article 103 of the Rome Statute. It would also enable the court to identify the most suitable state of enforcement in a given case, including in terms of a sentenced person's language, cultural background, and the need to maintain family ties. Poland, next to Georgia, Serbia, and Slovenia, is the fourth state of the Eastern European group of states to have signed an enforcement agreement with the court. The negotiations that have led us to today's signature were conducted under the decisive leadership of my esteemed predecessor, Judge Piotr Hochmansky. I know that he will be very glad to see that these joint efforts are coming to fruition today, and that his home country, Poland, is leading the way in joining the growing family of ICC enforcement states. As you are all well aware, the court now faces historic and unprecedented challenges, including enormous pressure, coercive measures, and possible sanctions from powerful actors. At this juncture, I have been reminded of a simple but compelling proverb, which I would like to share with you. A friend in need is a friend indeed. On behalf of the court, I therefore wish to express my sincere gratitude to you, Excellencies, and the government of the Republic of Poland for your continuous and unwavering support for the court. Through today's signature of an enforcement agreement with the court, Poland demonstrates one more its strong commitment to international criminal justice and to enabling the proper functioning of the court in all its aspects. Such voluntary cooperation is all the more important in challenging times and as we see more cases reaching the enforcement stage. I hope that Poland's example will encourage other states to make similar commitments in order to share the responsibilities of the Rome Statute. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Akane, for your statement. I would like to thank Poland once again for the signing of this important agreement. Today's ceremony is undoubtedly a very positive and encouraging sign for the court, and I think it deserves once more our warm applause. We will now return to the consideration of agenda item 5A, appointment of the Credentials Committee. In accordance with Rule 25 of the Rules of Procedure, a Credentials Committee consisting of representatives of 9 states parties shall be appointed. At our first meeting yesterday, the Assembly appointed the following states to the Credentials Committee: Estonia, Japan, Mexico, Netherlands, Panama, and Switzerland. At its 14th meeting this morning, the Bureau recommended that the Assembly appoint the Republic of Korea and Uganda to the Credentials Committee. May I take it that the Assembly agrees to proceed accordingly? It is so decided. We will now continue consideration of agenda item 7, general debate, both in the morning and the afternoon. States are invited, in accordance with Rule 50 of the Rules of Procedure of the Assembly, to deliver statements of no longer than 5 minutes. In order to assist the speakers with the timely delivery of their statements, a light mechanism was installed at the lectern. In order to accommodate all speakers, this time limit shall be strictly observed. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that written or pre-recorded statements that have been submitted in lieu of in-person statements as of yesterday have been posted on the respective webpage of the Assembly. I would invite delegations, please check the list of speakers dated 3rd December 24 at 8 a.m. available at the conference officer's desk, as there have been multiple changes. Let us proceed immediately with our first speaker. First speaker is His Excellency Mr. Luis Gilberto Murillo, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Colombia. You have the floor.
Presidenta.
Madam President of the Assembly of States Party of the Rome Statute, Your Honors of the ICC, distinguished members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished representatives of international organizations, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and all the other representatives in attendance here at the 23rd session of the Assembly of States Party. Let me say to you that it is a great honor for me to make this statement to you this morning on behalf of the Republic of Colombia on the occasion of the 23rd session of the Assembly of States Party to the Rome Statute. On this opportunity, I have wanted to make this statement in person before this honorable assembly as a way of making quite clear Colombia's full and complete commitment to the principles and values of the Rome Statute, as well as to its full support to the independence of the International Criminal Court. The work of the court is fundamental in order to prevent impunity for the most serious crimes that are of concern to the international community. And on more than few occasions, it really is the last court of last recourse is for victims to get redress and to uphold their rights. Colombia is an example of how the action of the ICC helps bolster the capacity of our own state and fosters the development of new legal tools that, once in the hands of national jurisdiction, makes it possible for justice to be properly administered in line with the standards that have been defined by the international community. This partnership with the court has been crucial in a process that has made it possible for us to overcome numerous obstacles, to come up with vigorous, novel approaches when it comes to enforcing the law and administering justice in line with international standards. And as a result, case law in Colombia is now being more and more aligned with the rulings handed down by international courts and stands now as a forerunner in the international community when it comes to doing this. Madam President, in Colombia, the quest for peace and justice is not just an aspiration. It is an ethical imperative. Our government has a policy of peace, which is a policy we call total peace. And what it seeks to achieve is to completely neutralize cycles of violence from the very beginning, and also includes a whole panoply of measures to protect Colombians' rights, and first and foremost, the right to life, also providing for reparations for victims of crimes, recognition of truth, to which we are committed, and also a commitment to never again. For the government of Colombia, this new policy of complementarity and cooperation from the Office of the Prosecutor of the ICC is an achievement that we see as a shared achievement, something that we have been involved in achieving with a great sense of responsibility. And this policy is going to make it possible for Colombia to continue to strengthen its cooperation internationally in the fields of justice, accountability, and the achievement of international standards of justice. This also helps us strengthen our own commitment to enhancing protection for human rights and further cementing the principles of a government based on the rule of law. Now, not long ago, we presented a progress report to the OTP on the ongoing investigations of crimes that were committed during the ongoing armed conflict in our country. In doing so, we have, in both of our cooperation agreements that we've signed with the Office of the Prosecutor, this whole process has been informed by these investigations. Madam President, Colombia is a success story for the international community when it comes to transitional justice and combating impunity. And this is why today we are presenting before this Assembly all of the major milestones that our justice system has achieved, and also draw everybody's attention to the importance of the following. For example, the combating violence, gender violence, providing protection to children, boys and girls and teens, and combating and sanctioning environmental crimes as established under international law. We are convinced that this new phase of cooperation between Colombia and the ICC can be seen as a model of innovation for other countries that find themselves in similar circumstances and that are willing and that are prepared to actually tackle these crimes of great international concern. Moreover, our support to the court and its mandate is in testimony of the fact that we are constantly providing observations on what we see as the current situation in the state of Palestine. Colombia has played a key role in the Assembly of the States Parties of the ICC, both here in The Hague and also in New York. In the working group, we are the coordinator of the working group on amendments to the Rome Statute. We would also like to reiterate that Colombia is fully committed to the principle of equitable geographic representation and gender equality in the staff of the ICC and in the bodies of the Assembly of States Parties, including the Bureau. And to conclude, I would simply echo what other delegations have said when it comes to rejecting the unilateral measures that have been imposed and that might stand in the way of the court being able to carry out its duties. It is vital for all states, including the states that have yet to ratify the Rome Statute, to respect the independence of the judges and the officials of the court. Because without that, the court will be incapable of carrying out the tasks that we've assigned to it. It has to continue working alongside all the states, hand in hand with the states, in order to address these most heinous crimes of international concern. And just lastly, it's my personal desire that under this diplomatic and judicial strategy, Colombia has proven to everybody that we stand ready to support any initiative that will make it possible for the International Criminal Court to fulfill its mission and its mandate, both nationally, but also regionally and globally. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you for your statement. And I now will give floor to the second speaker, Her Excellency Ms. Yvonne Dosab, Minister of Justice of Namibia. You have the floor, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Namibia congratulates you, Madam, on your election as President of the Assembly of State Parties of this 23rd session. We are also congratulating the Bureau on their appointment for this session and acknowledge with appreciation the incredible work done by the Bureau. Madam President, the ongoing armed conflicts across the world, including in the DRC, Sudan, Ethiopia, and the occupied Palestinian territory, threatens regional and world peace and our very existence. It seems the declaration of never again has become an empty promise to the global community as states continue to compromise our commitment to peace, security, and the protection of human rights, regardless of who the perpetrators and victims are. The future of humanity demands that we reaffirm the role of the International Criminal Court with its noble intent to be an instrument that brings justice for victims against whom the most serious crimes were committed without fear, prejudice, or favor. The court's independence, impartiality, and integrity is sacrosanct and should be protected. All courts, domestic, regional, or international, must enjoy this privilege and protection to undertake their function without an axe of sanctions and other coercive measures held over them. We must be consistent in how these key legal precepts are applied. The crimes of genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and the crime of aggression must be prosecuted in equal application against perpetrators and clarity of definitional elements to ensure the negative impact on humanity is minimized. Nations of the world must be firm and consistent about the consequences of non-compliance with the Rome Statute of the ICC. Otherwise, it makes it meaningless. It even begs the question why we have this noble international instrument creating a court if we can't comply with its letter, spirit, and tenets, or even worse, yet that we apply it selectively. Conflict-induced humanitarian crisis impedes the enjoyment of human rights, including the right to development. It goes against the fundamentals of sovereign equality, universal peace, and distorts the noble aspirations of human connection. It causes devastating and often untold suffering and destruction. We must ask ourselves, how can we stand by and watch? Today, 76 years following the adoption of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights and the Genocide Convention, we must remember why then and today never again must regain and maintain its significance and true meaning. Namibia is appalled by the death, injury, and suffering of the people of the occupied Palestinian territory. Their indiscriminate displacement, the destruction of infrastructure, including schools and hospitals, the denial of access to humanitarian aid is a total affront to the Geneva Conventions. Clearly, the face and nature of war has changed. War is nuanced in the aspects of climate change, cybercrime, blockades, global governance challenges, and the rise in conflict across the global spectrum of activity. One life lost is one too many. In Palestine, thousands of lives are lost on a daily basis. Our civilized collective conscience must be horrified. Namibia therefore welcomes the recent arrest warrants being issued by the International Criminal Court of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. That special treatment given to the crime of aggression under the current framework leaves smaller and more vulnerable states exposed to the threat of unmitigated aggression, often without any legal recourse. Genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity can be prosecuted under the International Criminal Court's jurisdiction without restraints. But the crime of aggression is inhibited by serious procedural and jurisdictional bottlenecks, which leaves many victims without recourse. A harmonized regime would better protect African nations from external violations of sovereignty, while also strengthening the broader international legal order. In alignment with Ghana's position on the principle of complementarity of jurisdiction, our late president, Dr. Hage G. Geingob, may his soul continue to rest in peace, called on African states to develop its own processes, systems, courts and institutions to be self-sufficient and build lasting institutions that will respond to the crisis in the world. Madam President, esteemed delegates, Namibia supports a consideration to A, remove the jurisdictional limitations on the crime of aggression, B, abolish the proposal that state parties to opt out of the court's jurisdiction over the crime of aggression, and finally, expand the definition of aggression to cover a wider range of acts and not limit it to primarily military action. The face of war has changed and the world must be responsive. Namibia concludes and reminds us to have this dialogue in a spirit of mutual trust, equality of states, and the collective good of all our peoples. And that Africa in particular, given its own historical experience with aggression during the colonial period, asserts its role to find best ways to prevent, fight, and resolve future conflicts as an equal with 54 member-strong sovereign states that are poised to play their role without fear or prejudice. In the midst of adversity, we must choose unity. In the midst of growing geopolitical tensions and uncertainty, our resolve as Africans should be to unite against the common enemy of impunity and aggression. It has no place in societies that pursue peace, justice, and humanity. We must always choose peace. I thank you.
I thank you for your statement. And the next speaker is His Excellency Mr. Juraj Podorsky, Ambassador of Slovakia to the Netherlands. You have the floor, Excellency.
Madam President, Slovakia aligns itself with the statement delivered on behalf of the European Union and its member states. I wish to make a few additional remarks in my national capacity. I shall begin by expressing our gratitude and highest appreciation to Mrs. Elena Sobková, Slovak national, who has concluded this autumn her membership of the Committee on Budget and Finance. Having been member of the CBF for over 20 years, as well as by serving 2 terms on the Audit Committee, Mrs. Sobková has significantly contributed to the sound financial management and budgetary oversight of the Court, the importance of which cannot be overstated. We also express our gratitude for the professional and committed service of the former Director of the Secretariat, Mr. Renan Viasis, to all state parties and the Assembly as a whole. Slovakia welcomes the deposit by Ukraine of its instrument of ratification of the Rome Statute, which will bring the total number of state parties to 125. Together with the accession of Armenia earlier this year, the Eastern European Group has made a significant contribution to the universality of the Rome Statute. We encourage other countries to follow these examples. Madam President, Slovakia reiterates its long-standing firm position whereby accountability for crimes under international law is a crucial element of the rules-based international order. For this goal to be achieved, a strong international criminal court is indispensable. ICC has served as a stronghold of the fight against impunity since its creation, and its fundamental mission in the field of international criminal justice as a permanent accountability mechanism must remain undisputed. The court is, however, facing an increasing number of significant challenges. Slovakia is especially gravely concerned by attacks and threats against the court, all made for the sole reason of carrying out its mandate and pursuing the fundamental interests of justice. We state clearly that such attacks and threats are simply unacceptable, and Slovakia stands firmly behind the court. We are prepared to support any meaningful measures to enable the court to carry out its mandate in a safe and secure environment. At the same time, besides the crucial role of state parties in supporting the court itself must take all necessary measures to make itself more resilient and immune against any outside attacks or attempts to interference, including by integrating the highest standards of accountability and integrity into all actions undertaken by the institution and its top officials. Madam President, besides political support, the Court is vitally reliant on state parties in the field of cooperation. Slovakia notes with concern that the high number of unexecuted arrest warrants and hopes that the changes at the Court, some implemented, some envisaged, aimed at strengthening cooperation, tracking of suspects and other related activities will yield tangible results in the foreseeable future. With regard to this issue, Slovakia notes with concern the failure of state party to cooperate with court as confirmed by Pre-Trial Chamber 2 and in its decision issued on 24 October 2024. Execution of arrest warrants is indispensable for trials to take place and thus for justice to be delivered. Finally, Slovakia welcomes the decision to be taken on the modalities of the review of the Kampala Amendment on the crime of aggression and expresses its readiness to engage constructively with all delegations with a view to achieving a unified jurisdictional regime of all 4 ICC crimes. To conclude, Madam President, I wish to recall Slovakia's unwavering support for the Court and assure you of our readiness to work constructively throughout this Assembly session. I thank you for your attention.
I thank you for your statement. And the next speaker is Mr. Claudio Troncoso Repetto, Director General of Legal Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Chile. You have the floor, Excellency.
Gracias.
Thank you, Madam President, Vice Presidents, distinguished representatives and delegates. I want to start by congratulating the President of the Assembly, Madam Päivi Kouranta, and the Vice Presidents for the outstanding work they've carried out this year. Their commitment has been essential to move forward in our shared goals. Similarly, I want to applaud the elected judges that have started their work this year and wishing them the best of success to come. The ICC fulfills an essential role to prevent and impose sanctions on the gravest of crimes. Therefore, its existence and proper functioning are essential for international peace and security. It is vital that state parties reaffirm our support to the Court and that we guarantee its independence and autonomy for the completion of its function and mission. Chile's trust in the work of the ICC has been reflected in recent years with the referral of several cases that have affected our country towards the Office of the Prosecutor together with other states. Therefore, we are concerned that the Court is still subject to threats and pressures. It is absolutely essential that our support to the Court be reaffirmed. Chile condemns all coercive measures against the Court or its officials and encourages other states to do the same, since these attacks are ultimately attacks against victims and to the desire for justice and the fight against impunity. We thank the Registrar of the Court, Mr. Osavala, and his team for his management of the crises and their commitment to a resilient and efficient court. Madam President, we are saddened by the increase in armed conflicts, which makes it harder to promote accountability and which increases the number of victims, especially among women and children. However, we applaud the advances made by the Court in cases such as Ukraine, Venezuela, and Palestine, as well as the decision on Al-Hassan for crimes of war in Mali. We want to applaud the prosecutor for the efforts in the DRC. I want to express interest in the positive advances in Afghanistan, where we find that the situation of the rights of women is truly alarming. We want to highlight the work of the Trust Fund for Victims so as to move forward for justice and reparations for those who have suffered severe crimes. We value especially the completion of reparations in the Katanga case, the call for cooperation in the Ongwen case, and the collective reparations in the case of Almadi. We thank the chairperson of the Board of Directors, and we will contribute voluntarily to said fund. Madam President, Chile is committed to an efficient court. We have promoted funding as well as political and operative support for the court to complete its mission, and this includes assigning appropriate resources. We've also worked as a focal point in the review process for the court to re-examine its mandate, and we want to thank Ambassador Paul van der Ixel for his leadership in that process. With respect to the budget, we believe that the court has to establish efficient and predictable lines, and it has to act in an impartial and efficient way, assigning the proper attribution of balanced resources, always prioritizing victims. We renew our commitment with the universality of the Rome Statute, and we invite new states to join, especially when it comes to ratifying the Kampala Amendment on the crime of aggression. We applaud Ukraine for its recent ratification of the statute, and we encourage other states to follow suit. We reemphasize the importance of the principle of complementarity and strengthening national capacities to combat impunity in the face of severe crime. The cooperation of states with the court is absolutely essential for the execution of arrest warrants and the correct processing of international justice. We applaud the complementarity policy and cooperation policy of the Office of the Prosecutor, as well as their policies on cyber crimes, crimes related to slavery, and crimes against the environment. Madam President, last but not least, we applaud the cooperation between the court and the UN, which is absolutely indispensable to address the crimes covered in the Rome Statute. We applaud the contribution of civil society and human rights defenders, and therefore we make an appeal to the international community to guarantee their safety, allowing them to work free of intimidation or threat. To conclude, Madam President, Chile supports the notion that all crimes covered by the court need to be investigated, sanctions need to be imposed without any sort of distinction. Many thanks, Madam President.
Thank you for your statement. And the next speaker is Her Excellency Ms. Patiasheva, Ambassador of the Republic of North Macedonia to the Netherlands. You have the floor, Excellency.
Thank you, Madam President. And first, let me start by congratulating you on your appointment and election as President of the Assembly and assure of my country's full support in implementing your mandate. Also, North Macedonia would like to express appreciation and assure of our strong support also to the newly elected President of the Court. The Republic of North Macedonia reiterates its strong support to the International Criminal Court and remains firmly committed to its independence, integrity, and efficient functioning. The International Criminal Court is one of the biggest achievements in the development of the international law and is a central institution for ending impunity and for bringing accountability on global level. North Macedonia fully aligns with the intervention delivered by the European Union, but below I would like to highlight a few points in my national capacity. The court's integrity must be preserved from political interference and pressure. Any attack or threat against the court, elected officials, personnel, and those cooperating with the court is unacceptable. It is also unacceptable that the court has experienced cyber attacks and other attempts at infiltration and intimidation. Madam President, North Macedonia welcomes the significant progress of work of the court over the past years, particularly at a time of increased workload. We commend the efforts of the Presidency, the Office of the Prosecutor, and of the Registrar to work towards ensuring well-functional court with the introduction of new policies, measures, and processes. In this regard, we welcome progress made in relation to the ongoing review of the International Criminal Court and the Rome Statute system, including on the implementation of a 10-year policy. We will remain actively engaged with other state parties and together with the court in ensuring that the implementation continues. Particular efforts need to be invested in building healthy work culture and promoting safe and inclusive space for the court personnel. The importance of further pursuing court's zero-tolerance policy towards harassment, discrimination, abuse of authority, and other misconduct, and of addressing any allegations and concerns with transparency and fairness cannot be stressed enough. Successful fulfilling of the mandate of the International Court depends heavily on cooperation with states. Therefore, we call on all states to comply with their obligations to cooperate fully with the Court as envisaged in the Rome Statute. North Macedonia also welcomes the recent adoption of the Ljubljana The Hague Convention on International Cooperation in the Investigation and Prosecution of the Crime of Genocide, Crimes Against Humanity, War Crimes, and other international crimes, and is proud to be among the signatories of this important international instrument, which ensures more effective mutual legal assistance. We would like to congratulate the Court Group for bringing the negotiations to a successful outcome. North Macedonia also warmly welcomes the 2 new states parties to the Rome Statute, Armenia, and from 1st of January 2025, Ukraine. This is a visible contribution to the universality of the Rome Statute. Based on our conviction that the most serious crimes could only be prevented by universal application of the Rome Statute, we join the others in advocating the universal ratification of the Rome Statute. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you for your statement. And the next speaker is Ms. Kaija Suvanto, Director General at the Legal Service of the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of Finland. You have the floor.
Madam President, Excellencies, Finland aligns itself with a statement delivered earlier by Hungary on behalf of the European Union and its member states. Allow me to congratulate the Presidency of the Assembly and judges elected during the last session of the Assembly, as well as the new Presidency of the Court. You can count on Finland's unwavering support to the ICC. Accountability for serious violations of international law, including individual criminal responsibility of those most responsible, is a key component of lasting international peace. For 2 decades, the ICC has been leading our efforts to curb impunity for the most serious crimes of concern to the international community as a whole. Today, the ICC remains as important as ever, given the atrocities unfolding in many parts of the world. Madam President, regrettably, the court is facing threats, attacks, and intimidation while carrying out its mandate. Finland condemns any threats, attacks, or interference against the court, its personnel, or those cooperating with it, including any attempt to impose and implement sanctions. The independence of judicial institutions is a fundamental component of the rule of law and must be safeguarded at all times. We call on all states to respect the independence and impartiality of the court. Finland stands by the ICC, which must be allowed to carry out its mandate without fear or favour. Under the Rome Statute, state parties are obliged to cooperate fully with the court and comply with requests for arrest and surrender. ICC's ability to fulfill its mandates is dependent on states meeting the cooperation obligations, including in the execution of arrest warrants. We deplore any instances of non-compliance with the obligation to cooperate. We also urge all state parties to avoid non-essential contacts with suspects under ICC arrest warrants. All states, whether parties to the Rome Statute or not, can cooperate with the ICC, and we encourage all to do so. Cooperation has many forms, from information sharing to the relocation of witnesses and enforcement of sentences. Madam President, nearly 2/3 of all UN member states are also states parties to the Rome Statute. Finland warmly welcomes Ukraine to this family and hopes other states will follow its example. The universality of the Rome Statute remains a central priority as it fosters the worldwide ecosystem of accountability. We emphasize the importance of a healthy and inclusive working culture, as well as the court's zero tolerance policy towards harassment and other misconduct. We stress the importance of addressing and investigating any allegations in a fair and impartial manner with full respect for the presumption of innocence, as well as the duty of care towards ICC personnel. To deliver on its promise and mandate, the court needs resources that match its increasing workload. The cyber attack on the court last year highlights the need to protect the ICC and invest more in its security through regular budget funding. Given the pressuring security challenges the court is facing, Finland has nevertheless decided to make a voluntary contribution to the Special Fund for Security to support the court's efforts. Madam President, Finland looks forward to the review of the amendments on the crime of aggression next year. We believe that aligning the ICC's jurisdiction over the crime of aggression more closely with the other three core crimes would raise the threshold of warfare and thus greatly benefit all state parties and contribute to international peace and security. As we support and protect the ICC itself, we must also do the same for those who collaborate with the court. Human rights defenders and civil society actors are often the first to alert states and the ICC of serious violations of international law, wherever they take place. This cooperation is not without risk. At the heart of the Rome Statute system was always the promise to focus on the victims. The ICC remains an important avenue to access justice, assistance and reparation for thousands of victims and survivors around our world. Finland is a long-standing supporter of the Trust Fund for Victims, and I call on others to join us. We wish the new board of directors of the Trust Fund every success upon starting their term. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you for your statement. And the next speaker is Mr. Abdul Rashid Amin, Director of Public Prosecutions of Mauritius. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very much honored to address this August Assembly on behalf of the Republic of Mauritius. Let me first acknowledge the contribution of this Assembly and the ICC to fighting impunity for the world's most atrocious crimes. The fight is no easy fight. We all know of the tragic consequences of international crimes for local, regional, and the international community. The work of the court is more than ever essential if we want to see a reduction in war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. We do not live in an ideal world. It will never be possible to satisfy everyone. But we should all nevertheless recognize the endless efforts put by the ICC to fulfill its mandate without fear or favor. We stand firmly by the ICC to defend its independence when same is under attack. But we must also be realistic when it comes to fighting international crimes by the ICC. Without any doubt, the ICC is a key player in this, but there are many ways we can assist the court in its mission, even though our contribution could only be a small part, and I would wish to focus on this briefly today. We cannot simply rely solely on the court to do all the work. Its limited resources mean that it cannot investigate all the atrocity happening in the world. Complementarity is still important, and we, state parties, have to help the court by playing our part too. Only referring cases to the court is not always the only option. As countries, we should do our level best to also investigate, prosecute international crimes whenever we can. When it comes to international or atrocity crime, we cannot just watch. We have to protect, defend, preserve the integrity of humanity, and most importantly, the dignity of fellow human beings. National prosecutions are now considered as a primary vehicle for the enforcement of international crime for many reasons, political, sociological, practical reasons, but above all, it should be for justice and victims of international crimes. Madam President, we should do this not only if these crimes take place in our jurisdiction, but also when these crimes happen elsewhere. We can do this whenever the alleged perpetrators step in our respective countries, or we make use of the concept of universal jurisdiction. But, esteemed colleagues, you might say that such crimes are not easily provable, or that often we lack the evidence or skill and adequate resources to carry on these prosecutions ourselves. To some extent, this is true, but we must sometimes think differently. If for one reason or another we cannot investigate, prosecute international crimes directly, there are satellite or parallel crimes that can be addressed seriously. There is now greater potential to intervene and disrupt. We should therefore strengthen our capacity to address international crimes domestically. To do this, we must favor a comprehensive local legislative framework which would help in achieving this. We all know that international crime generates transnational criminality. Perpetrators pillaging villages or towns might move the proceeds of international crimes to other jurisdictions, including ours. Money used to purchase weapons, vehicles, hire soldiers or militia might even transit through our respective jurisdictions. Whenever this is the case, we should act. We in Mauritius take this seriously, being an offshore jurisdiction. We have enacted a panoply of legislation to address all these issues. We should act by investigating, freezing assets, prosecuting not only those directly perpetrating international crimes, but also those who aid and abet and otherwise offer assistance to the commission of these crimes. These would include people laundering the proceeds of these crimes, but also those financing armed groups in the different conflict zones around the world. It is one way of breaking the cycle of impunity for international crime and delivering justice to victims of international crimes. Every effort helps. If we all play our parts, then together we may significantly disrupt criminal activity. No country here today should make it easy for the commission of these crimes, be it directly or indirectly. To end impunity, we should renew our vigilance and do everything we can to contribute in our own way to fight criminal activity whenever and wherever we can, and in so doing, helping each other as well as the ICC in discharging its very important responsibilities. I thank you very much for your attention.
And thank you for your statement. And the next speaker is Her Excellency Ms. Ana Cristina Rodriguez Pineda, Ambassador of Guatemala to the Netherlands. You have the floor, Excellency.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Guatemala wishes to thank you for doing an excellent job in the chair, and we congratulate you on your election to head the Bureau. at this session of the ASP. You can count on my delegation's support throughout the session. I would like to take this opportunity to show our full support to the leadership, the officials, and the staff of the court. We would encourage them to continue doing their invaluable job, contributing to international peace and security through justice. Madam President, we welcome the significant strides made by the court over the past year. I would like to begin by mentioning the emblematic sentence handed down by Trial Chamber 10 in the Al Hassan case. This is the first case in which there's been an extensive investigation into crimes against humanity, against people in a seizure of power by jihadist forces, and also persecution for gender crimes and religious persecution. This shows how international criminal law is naturally evolving in order to address these changing situations. Another milestone is the full implementation of the reparations program in the Katanga case. This is a major milestone not just for the Rome Statute, but also for the survivors of the attack in the village of Bogoro. This experience has also pointed to some challenges that we face, lessons that we must learn in order to continue improving the performance of the court. Secondly, let me point to the end of the review process following many consultations amongst member states parties and the court to evaluate the recommendations of the internal group of experts report. Guatemala would like to pay tribute to the hard work done by the facilitators of the working groups. They did a flawless job in analyzing each and every recommendation and moderating an effective dialogue around those recommendations. Third, in order to bring those responsible for committing such crimes to justice, the court has to continue standing strong and has to call and count on greater participation from the states parties to the Rome Statute. We're pleased to see that this year the number of states party has risen to 125 following the ratifications of Armenia and Ukraine, respectively. Now, Chairman, not everything is perfect. There's still a lot of work to be done. For example, the states have to play a more active role in cooperating with the court. And here I'm not referring just to individual efforts of individual states, but also what we can all achieve together at regional and global levels. Initiatives such as the Ljubljana-The Hague Treaty actually strengthen this approach and strengthen the implementation of the court's decisions. In a similar vein, we've seen the recent resolution adopted by the UNGA's Sixth Commission, which was co-sponsored by a country, which is calling for convening plenipotentiary representatives of states in order to negotiate a legally binding instrument for the prevention and punishment of crimes against humanity by 2028. And this legal instrument will fill legal loopholes and strengthen national legal frameworks, will make it possible for complementarity to really flourish. Similarly, we have to do everything we can to achieve greater unity and trust building between the states and the court. The mandate that we've tasked the court with we've done this in the interest of the international community as a whole, and what it requires of all states parties is that we act in concert. We have to defend and uphold the capacity of the court without outside and undue interference. My delegation expresses its consternation by the recent threats to the integrity and independence of the ICC, its judges, its officials, including cyber attacks. Guatemala calls on everybody to uphold the independence of the court. Independence, however, is not incompatible with in-house accountability. We have to have a system that is solid in order to make sure that everybody working in the very difficult and highly charged atmosphere of the court feel protected. Now more than ever, we need the independent oversight mechanism that is strong, that is robust, in order to address these issues of people stepping beyond the norms of professional conduct and holding them to account. We've had arrangements for this in the past, but it's more important to create conditions which will prevent such incidents from occurring again. We support this mechanism, and we trust that through its good offices, the court will be able to strengthen its legitimacy and probity. Madam President, today it seems like we're incapable of addressing these major challenges without having collective approaches. And I was referring to recent ratifications of the Rome Statute. The strength of this assembly, though, is not just one of numbers. It actually lies in their commitment and their political will, and acting states that will act as responsible members of the international community without abiding by double standards. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement. And the next speaker is Ms. Sally Langrush, Director General Legal at the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office of United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. You have the floor. Thank you.
Madam President, Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I welcome this opportunity to address the Assembly on behalf of the Government of the United Kingdom. Madam President, the United Kingdom is a resolute supporter of international law, international accountability, and the International Criminal Court. The United Kingdom recognises and congratulates the Court on its progress this year. The Court's successes should be celebrated. We congratulate the Court's 6 new judges on their election to the bench, as well as Judge Akane on her election as President of the Court, and Judges Aitala and Alapini Gansu as Vice Presidents. We thank the outgoing Director of the Secretariat of the Assembly, Renan Viasis, for his long service to the Assembly and the ICC. We are glad to note that the Court concluded the Al Hassan trial, resulting in convictions for war crimes and crimes against humanity. The Court has made significant progress across other investigations. We commend the work of the Trust Fund for Victims, seeking to ensure that the interests of victims are considered at all stages of ICC proceedings. We note the reparations order in the case of Dominic Ongwen and the challenges and opportunities ahead in identifying eligible victims and securing funding. As the prosecutor noted in his remarks at the opening of this session yesterday, over the last year, the Office of the Prosecutor has applied for more warrants than ever before in the history of the Court and reached similar milestones in the collection of evidence. We commend the dedication of the Court's staff, not just in the OTP, but across the board in this difficult work. We also note that these developments could not happen without the cooperation of states parties under the Rome Statute. We also welcome the significant steps the Court has taken towards universality over the past year. We welcome the Republic of Armenia to this Assembly, joining the Court in February this year, and we greatly look forward to welcoming Ukraine as the Court's 125th state party in the new year. As an Assembly, we should all look to deepen our cooperation and partnership with both of these new states parties. Madam President, the world in 2025 will remain a volatile place, and the pressure on the Court to investigate, prosecute and render judgments will only increase. The expectations and the aspirations of states parties, victims and civil society have never been higher. It is right that we have high expectations of the Court, yet we must not ask the Court to go beyond its existing mandate set out in the Rome Statute. The UK firmly believes that state parties must support the Court as it stands now, before asking it to go further. This is particularly relevant where going further risks fragmenting the international criminal system or moving beyond existing agreement between state parties. The Court's workload is already a monumental endeavour, and the need for international accountability has arguably never been greater. So we note with clear eyes that the collection of evidence and the issuing and unsealing of arrest warrants will not necessarily result in a clear pipeline of trials. It is incumbent on all states parties to consider how we work together with the Court to address these challenges. At this testing time for the court, states parties must stand united in our categorical support for the court, the Rome Statute, and the international rule of law. The United Kingdom is unequivocal that it will respect and uphold the independence of the court. This support is hardened in the face of a range of attacks on the court, not least the major cyber attack carried out in 2023. Madam President, against the context of these successes and challenges, the United Kingdom trusts that state parties will agree to provide the court with the funding that it needs, particularly with respect to security, to ensure that the court has the capacity to deliver on its mandate and meet the expectations of states parties. We are also clear that there are other ways to cooperate with and support the court in addition to the budget. The UK is proud to be facilitating secondees in the Office of the Prosecutor. We are also a partner for the court in sentence enforcement and witness protection, areas where the court requires more states parties to enter into such arrangements to provide deeper support. The United Kingdom remains firmly committed to the foundational Rome Statute principle of complementarity. We continue to demonstrate this through our work with US and EU partners to support Ukraine's Office of the Prosecutor General. Ukraine's prosecutions and investigations of atrocity crimes committed since Russia's illegal invasion, supported by the Atrocity Crimes Advisory Group, underpins the Rome Statute system and preserves the ICC as the court of last resort. The relationship between the court and the states parties is symbiotic. It requires a great deal of trust and hard work on both sides. And so while there is much that states parties can do for the court can reciprocate by taking on board feedback from states parties. We share states parties' concerns at the length of time taken in IOM investigations, the lack of transparency among the trust funds, and slow progress in improving workplace culture. Having said all that, Madam President, the United Kingdom commends the progress that the court has made in 2024 in delivering its mandate, in spite of many efforts to undermine its independence and impartiality. We would also like to thank you personally, Madam President, for your clear and impressive leadership of the Assembly over this last year. Our support for the court and for its independence is resolute. The United Kingdom remains committed to the effective functioning of this vital pillar of the international judicial order. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement. And the next speaker is His Excellency Mr. Neilas Stankevičius, Ambassador of Lithuania to the Netherlands. You have the floor, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Madam President of the Assembly, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. While aligning with the statement made by the European Union, I would like to address this Assembly in the national capacity. I would like to join in congratulating the new President of this Assembly, Päivi Kaukaranta, and elected President of the Court, Tomoka Kane, and the new elected judges. I wish them all the best. Lithuania reiterates its continued support to the International Criminal Court, and its unwavering commitment to the values of the court upholds and defends in the pursuit of justice. And Lithuania's support also includes additional voluntary contributions to Special Fund for Security and the Trust Fund for Victims. Preventing immunity is a critical element of the mission of the ICC. The court works tirelessly to bring the perpetrators of the most serious international crimes to justice. This requires not only effective investigative mechanisms, the apprehension of the suspects, the protection and relocation of victims, but also strict compliance by state parties with the obligations under the Rome Statute. In particular, the obligation to cooperate with the court by thus to arrest and surrender any suspect sought by the court. We regret that certain state party recently failed to arrest Russian President Putin during his visit to its territory in early September this year. Such a non-compliance directly hinders the efforts of the international community to ensure justice for the victims of Russian crimes in Ukraine and protects perpetrators from accountability. It is far from satisfactory that many warrants issued by the court, including against Putin, have not been executed. In this context, I urge all the parties to refrain from unnecessary contacts with a person subject to arrest warrants that could compromise the integrity of the court. By maintaining a clear and principled stance, we can safeguard the independence and impartiality of the court and strengthen public confidence in its work and in justice as a whole. I must also express our strong concern about the growing threat to the authority of the court. These threats, whether through political interference, intimidation, or the undermining of judicial independence, pose a grave danger to the ICC. It is crucial that all states stand firm against such pressures and protect the integrity of the court's judicial processes. Madam President, distinguished delegates, this understanding that international crimes should not go unpunished encourages us to continuously strengthen the capacity of the court in exercising its jurisdiction, in particular jurisdiction over the crimes of aggression. Lithuania stresses the importance of reviewing the Kampala amendments in order to enable the court to exercise the same jurisdiction over the crimes of aggression as over the other three categories of international crimes. Lithuania reaffirms the need for an effective special tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine, which must be empowered to deliver real justice for the crime of aggression committed by Russia's top political and military leadership. The establishment of the tribunal must respect Ukraine's expectations and ensure broad cross-regional support. Lithuanians' commitment to international justice is also illustrated by the recent referral of Lithuania to ICC, requesting the prosecutor to investigate alleged crimes against humanity of deportation, persecution, and other inhuman acts being carried out by senior Belarusian leaders against the civilian population of Belarus. Civilians from Belarus have been forcibly displaced into Lithuania and other state parties as a result of Lukashenko's regime's crimes. We look forward to other states facing the consequences of the forced deportation of the Lukashenko's regime, as well as those concerned by the stability of the region, human rights, and justice, to joining us. I would like also to take this opportunity to congratulate Armenia as a new state party to the Rome Statute, as well as Ukraine for depositing its instrument of ratification of the Rome Statute and thus becoming the new 125th state party to the ICC as of the 1st of January 2025. This is a strong and welcome step towards justice. In conclusion, I urge all state parties to remain committed to supporting the court in order to protect and enhance its independence, to promote universality, and to defend the integrity of the Rome Statute, as well as to comply with the obligations under the statute. We call upon all states not to abandon justice, but to build it firmly, not as far-reaching ideal for someone, but as a close reality for all. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement. And the next speaker is Sorry, my microphone was not on. So I thank the previous speaker and call the next speaker, His Excellency Mr. Ki Hwan Huion, Deputy Minister for Multilateral and Global Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea. You have the floor, Excellency.
Madam President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, it's a profound honor to address this assembly on behalf of the government of the Republic of Korea, reaffirming Korea's unwavering commitment to the International Criminal Court. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to you, Madam President, in your capacity as President of the Assembly, as well as to the team of the Bureau, the working groups, and the Secretariat of the Assembly, for all the excellent work in preparing for this 23rd session. My delegation also commends the joint efforts of the Presidency, the Chambers, the Office of the Prosecutor, and the Registry for their unwavering dedication and diligence in handling an impressive workload over the period from 23rd August 2021 to 31st July 2024. During this time, the Chambers issued 532 written decisions. A combined total of over 16,000 victims participated in cases before the court, and the court received more than 4,500 new victim application forms. These figures reflect the extraordinary efforts undertaken by the court to uphold justice and ensure meaningful participation for victims. At the outset, I would like to reaffirm that Korea supports and respects the court's independence, impartiality, and integrity. We have consistently worked in cooperation to ensure that the ICC develops into a fair and efficient international criminal court. Madam President, in the face of complex crisis, the pursuit of international criminal justice faces numerous challenges. In this context, I must draw attention to one of the gravest challenges we face, deeply troubling alignment between DPRK and Russia. Today, as the war against Ukraine continues into its third year, North Korea has gone beyond supplying weapons and munitions. It has now deployed at least 11,000 troops, including special forces, to aid Russia's illegal war of aggression. This reckless military collusion is not only a blatant violation of international law and multiple UN Security Council resolutions, but also a direct assault on the global order we are here to defend. North Korea must recognize that the accountability of its actions extends beyond the regime itself, placing individuals at risk under international criminal law. Based on the specific actions of North Korean military forces, such individuals may be prosecuted for war crimes or crimes against humanity. The Republic of Korea therefore urges North Korea to abandon this dangerous path, to cease its military adventurism, and to withdraw its troops immediately. In moments like these, the international community must stand firm. Our shared duty is clear: to safeguard the principles of international justice against such unlawful practices. As the Rome Statute reminds us, the most serious crimes of concern to the international community as a whole must not go unpunished. We must hold fast to this commitment. Madam President, the Republic of Korea firmly believes that the success of the ICC depends on the respective roles of the court and its state parties. To this end, we remain dedicated to supporting the court's work and enhancing its effectiveness within the framework of the Rome Statute. I would like to congratulate Poland for signing an agreement on the enforcement of sentences with the ICC today. On this occasion, I am also pleased to announce that the Republic of Korea has become the first state party in the Asia-Pacific region to conclude agreement on enforcement of sentences with the court. This milestone reflects our commitment to fostering deeper collaboration and setting an example of meaningful engagement. As an aid country focal point on universality, we welcome Armenia as a new member of this assembly and look forward to Ukraine joining as a state party in 2025. In this spirit, we invite you to our side event on universality later today. This is a collaborative effort with our partners from the Netherlands, the Coalition for the ICC, and the Parliamentarians for Global Action. Moreover, we recognize that the court's legitimacy depends on its efficiency and fairness. We expect the ICC to exercise prudence in resource management, balancing the financial constraints of state parties with the need for operational effectiveness. At the same time, we support essential investments that enable the court to meet its mandate, including maintaining the full bench of 21 judges. Next year marks a significant moment for the Rome Statute, with a review conference on the crime of aggression set to convene. We thank the government of Belgium for its leadership in coordinating this effort and pledge our active participation to ensure it becomes a milestone for strengthening international justice. Madam President, in closing, let me reaffirm the Republic of Korea's steadfast commitment to the ICC and the principles of the Rome Statute. Together, through dialogue and determination, we can advance the cause of justice and accountability for the benefit of humanity. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you for your statement. And the next speaker is His Excellency Mr. Fernando Simas Magallanes, Ambassador of Brazil to the Netherlands. You have the floor, Excellency.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning. I would like to commend you, Madam President, for your leadership in guiding the Assembly of State Parties. It has been a year of pressure and challenges for the International Criminal Court. Under your leadership and that of Vice Presidents Cano and Kasangana, we have achieved meaningful progress. I would also like to congratulate the newly elected members of the Committee on Budget and Finance, the Advisory Committee on Nomination of Judges, and the Board of Directors of the Trust Fund for Victims, particularly Judge Monica Cifuentes from Brazil. I am confident they will make invaluable contributions to the work of the court. When this court was established, many envisioned a world moving toward international peace and stability. The increase of violence across the globe has demonstrated how misguided that expectation was. We are approaching the end of an especially demanding year for the court. Conflicts around the world, characterized by the recurrent commission of crimes under the Rome Statute, have significantly increased the workload of the ICC. Attacks, threats, and the looming risk of sanctions against the court and its officials have been testing its resilience. These threats and attacks aimed at undermining the court's mandate and independence are clearly unacceptable. Its officials have endured acts of intimidation against themselves and their families. Placing unilateral sanctions over the court is a clear attack on the international rule of law. As a founding member of the court, Brazil remains committed to supporting the mandate of the court and asserts that its officials and staff should carry out their duties free from any intimidation by anyone, anywhere. Madam President, payments made by Brazil to the court in 2024 have reached the amount of about 8 million euros. My country is fully up to date with its financial obligations to the annual budget of the court. I must, however, underscore that it is imperative for the ICC to enhance its mechanisms for resource optimization and expenditure control and effectiveness in the performance of its duties. Brazil stands ready to cooperate with the ICC on the implementation of its mandate, taking into account its domestic law and international obligations. Regrettably, despite recent and very important movement by the court in key investigations, there is a continuing perception of double standards and selectivity lingering over the ICC. Those responsible for crimes under the Rome Statute must be treated equally, irrespective of their status or affiliations. All victims deserve equal and non-discriminatory attention, respect, and timely justice. Human lives hold the same value, regardless of their origin, class, race, or gender. The ICC must ensure equal standards in this regard. Madam President, the Latin American Caribbean region is one of the most committed regions of the ICC, with widespread membership among states. Nevertheless, we remain chronically underrepresented, whether in the Bureau of the Assembly of States Parties or within the ASP itself. We have consistently advocated for geographical representation and gender balance. It is urgent to reform the court's governance to make it more representative and inclusive. Brazil strongly expects that in 2025, we will be able to reform the geographical composition of the Bureau, in order to increase the representation of Latin America, Africa, and the Asia-Pacific regions. One of the topics we will also address during this assembly is the review conference on the Kampala amendments, which define the crime of aggression under the statute. It is worth emphasizing in this regard that only about 1/3 of the state parties have ratified those amendments. So, in our view, the 2025 review exercise should primarily aim to understand the reasons for this low level of adherence, with a view to building bridges and narrowing the divide. Recent developments in the global political landscape suggest that 2025 could be an even more challenging year for the Court. In this context, it is crucial that the ICC and its organs operate in a balanced, independent, and impartial manner. An effective and efficient international criminal court is what we state parties expect, moving towards the universalization of the Rome Statute. In conclusion, Madam President, Brazil warmly welcomes Armenia and Ukraine, who joined the ICC in 2024. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you for your statement. And the next speaker is Ms. Marie-Charlotte McKenna, Assistant Secretary, International Law Branch, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade of Australia. You have the floor, madam.
Madam President, Honourable Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. Australia would like to congratulate you, Madam President, on your election as President of this Assembly. And we also congratulate the Court's President, Her Excellency Judge Tomoko Akane, who commenced in her significant leadership position this year. We pay tribute and express our appreciation to former President Hofmanski for his contribution over many years to the Court and to its work. Australia also welcomes the 6 newly elected judges who were sworn in March of this year. We are encouraged that the Court has once more achieved gender parity. Madam President, we consider the Court is well placed to deliver on its core mandate of holding perpetrators to account for the most serious international crimes. Australia remains a steadfast supporter of the Court. We are committed to upholding and defending the principles and values enshrined in the Rome Statute and to protecting the Court's integrity and its independence. This is vital for the Court to be able to effectively carry out its mandate, free from threats and interference. In the wake of malicious cyber activities against the Court, never has this been more important than now. We unequivocally condemn all such malicious activity and renew our resolve to stand united against impunity. These efforts will not weaken the international community's commitment to justice and accountability. Madam President, we express our appreciation for the Court's continued commitment to its mandate over the course of the year, a year marked by a significant increase in investigations, pretrial proceedings, trials, and appeals. We note that in 2023, the Court was seized of 22 situations, with the pretrial chamber alone issuing 191 decisions and orders. Today, 3 trials are on foot. As the Court's work continues to grow, we encourage it to focus on its core mandate and to find ways to work effectively and efficiently within the reality of finite resources. We also acknowledge the resources entailed by the Court's increasing workload, as well as the necessary security uplift in the wake of malicious cyber activities against the Court. Australia therefore supports an appropriate budget increase to enable the court to continue its fight against impunity. Madam President, we believe the fight against impunity starts at home. As a court of last resort, the court's role is complementary to that of national criminal jurisdictions. It is states which bear the primary responsibility to investigate and, where appropriate, to prosecute those responsible for serious international crimes. We are therefore committed to putting words into actions through our own national efforts. As co-focal point on complementarity, Australia is grateful to have worked closely with Uganda again this year to facilitate dialogue on this critical issue. We would like to thank both the court and states parties for their continued engagement in a structured dialogue on the complementarity recommendations of the independent expert review, which have now all been implemented. We welcome this milestone achievement and stand ready to build on this progress. We also welcome the Office of the Prosecutor's new policy on complementarity and cooperation, released in April of this year, which lays the foundation for a better shared understanding of the principles of complementarity and cooperation. We look forward to continuing to facilitate this dialogue on complementarity and on gender-based crimes, and to supporting the court's survivor-centred approach to accountability for gender-based crimes in 2025. Madam President, this year saw the review mechanism make considerable progress towards successfully completing its mandate in assessing the 384 recommendations of the independent expert review, many of which are now being implemented. This is a significant achievement, and Australia thanks the review mechanism for leading review and reform of the court as a transparent and inclusive state party-driven process. We believe the process of reform is, however, an ongoing one, and we encourage the court and all states parties to reflect upon the ways in which the functioning of the court may continue to be strengthened. It is important that the investment we have collectively made in the review and reform process continues to pay dividends. Australia is committed to continuing its active support and partnership with the court in achieving the success that we all wish this to be. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you for your statement. Next speaker is His Excellency Mr. Christian Venaweser, Ambassador, Permanent Representative of Liechtenstein to the United Nations. You have the floor, Excellency.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, the past year has underscored, often in tragic ways, the growing importance of the ICC and its indispensable role in delivering justice to victims of the gravest crimes. The three major conflicts in the world today, in Sudan, in Gaza and Ukraine, are all active investigations by the ICC. In all three investigations, the very highest present or former leadership has had arrest warrants issued against them. The court has the task to hold individuals accountable for the most serious crimes under international law, which inevitably are often persons in powerful positions. We recall in this context that Article 27 of the Rome Statute applies to all persons who have committed Rome Statute crimes under the court's jurisdiction without exception. This means that the court is inherently at risk of political attacks. And even though this court is looking back at a long history of such attacks, there has never been a more important moment to stand up in support of the court together to proactively mitigate risk than now. As we meet, the court finds itself under sustained attack. Cyber attacks have disrupted its operations, causing significant financial and operational challenges. More disturbingly even, non-state parties have imposed unprecedented retaliatory measures on senior UN officials for fulfilling their mandates under the Rome Statute, while others are threatening sanctions against the institution itself. These attacks strike at the heart of judicial and prosecutorial independence, a principle foundational to any system of justice, domestic or international. We in this room have a duty to respond, defending the court from these actions and threats and demonstrating our unwavering support. This is not only about protecting one institution, but about standing firm for the rule of law at the international level, a principle that is key, particularly for small and medium-sized states, to ensure their protection in an increasingly difficult geopolitical environment. Madam President, in this regard, it is equally vital that we provide the court with the resources it needs to carry out its mandate effectively and independently. And on the court side, for it to improve its work culture and the efficiency of the use of its resources. The continued crises around the world, from Myanmar to Libya, underscore the growing demand for the court's work. Our support, expressed in speeches in this room, must translate into actions, particularly through an adequate budget. Only then can we ensure the court's effectiveness, credibility, and independence. Our statements of support for the court are only credible if backed up by concrete actions. We must use this as an opportunity to build stronger consensus among ourselves as states parties and with the wider UN membership. A truly global court requires active and inclusive engagement from all of us. This includes not only broadening the geographic scope of the court's activities, but also ensuring universal participation in its principles and practices. We must redouble our work towards universality of the Rome Statute, including the ratification of its amendments, in particular, the Kampala amendments on the crime of aggression. There is no bigger sign of the court's continued success than new states joining the Rome Statute system. 2 states have done so in the last year, Armenia and Ukraine, and we welcome them among ourselves. In this regard, we look forward to Ukraine soon officially becoming the ICC's 125th state party, a step of utmost importance for the court and for accountability efforts in Ukraine. Ukraine was also a wake-up call for the imperative to deter aggression everywhere in order to protect international peace and security. We have to urgently review the limitations of the ICC's jurisdiction over the crime of aggression. We look forward to working with all of you to address this accountability gap and to realize the harmonization of the Rome Statute's jurisdiction over all 4 of its core crimes at the special session of this Assembly next July in New York. Madam President, in addressing the General Assembly at its opening session, Secretary General Guterres said the following words, and I quote, "Let's move our world towards less impunity and more accountability," end of quote. Indeed, if we are serious about defending and standing up for international law, accountability is crucial. There is no better way to promote accountability than by giving this court the political, diplomatic, and financial support it needs, by rallying around its global mandate and by avoiding perceptions of double standards. Challenges in my own region, in Europe, are no more and no less important than those elsewhere. We must therefore empower the ICC and the international law more broadly to meet the moment. Indeed, if we act even-handedly and consistently, the rule of law will come out stronger at the other end. Madam President, this court stands on the right side of history. It is a cornerstone of the international legal order we strive to preserve against forces seeking to undermine the rule of law. Cyber attacks, sanctions, and political coercion must not deter us from our shared vision of a world where justice prevails over impunity and where everybody is held accountable for their crimes and nobody is above the law. I thank you.
Thank you for your statement. The next speaker is Ms. Tiffany Petel, First Secretary at the Embassy of Belgium, accredited also to the Netherlands of Trinidad and Tobago. You have the floor. Thank you.
Madam President, distinguished delegates, on behalf of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, it is my distinct honor to address this 23rd session of the Assembly of States Parties to the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. Madam President, from the onset, Trinidad and Tobago has played an instrumental role in the establishment of the court, recognizing the imperative of putting an end to impunity for the perpetrators of the most serious crimes of concern to the international community. By its nature and architecture, the court has been put in place to benefit all and remains a symbol of hope to victims who are seeking justice. The ICC is a key institution in the preservation of the international rules-based system, and Trinidad and Tobago remains unwavering in its support to the court in the execution of its mandate. We remain a strong advocate for the court in the Caribbean. In these very challenging times, Madam President, Trinidad and Tobago calls on this Assembly to put mechanisms in place to deepen and strengthen the institutional capacity of the court so that it could effectively withstand the headwinds to come. Justice must not only be done, but seem to be done, and in order for this to happen, the court's processes and mechanisms must be strengthened. Moreover, the court's independence and impartiality must be preserved and protected at all costs. Trinidad and Tobago calls on this august body to ensure that at the end of the proceedings of the 23rd session, our resolution reaffirms these core principles. Distinguished delegations, the court represents the last hope and voice for the many victims of the crimes under the auspices of the court. The rights of the victims must remain paramount in our deliberations, for they have no other recourse. The impartial delivery of justice should be the very reason for our convocation this week. This Assembly must stand firm in empowering the court and its hard-working officials to withstand any attempts of intimidation. Coercive measures, including sanctions, have no place and should gain no foothold against staff, and any efforts in this regard are truly regrettable and unacceptable. States parties have a key role to play in resisting these pressures as members of this court and on behalf of the very institution and the ideal that it represents. Madam President, no individual or state should fear this court of last resort, as the presumption of innocence has universal appeal, with an individual presumed innocent until proven guilty. There are many safeguards in the court that help to reassert this fundamental principle. Trinidad and Tobago takes the opportunity to call upon states parties to cooperate with the court at all stages of investigations and proceedings, including complying with the dictates of the court. Madam President, Trinidad and Tobago acknowledges the important work undertaken by the review mechanism to enhance the court's efficiency and which has contributed to the strengthening of the Rome Statute system. We commend the review mechanism for its tireless and important work and look forward to imminent discussions on the future of the review process. In closing, Madam President, Trinidad and Tobago acknowledges the 26 years of existence of the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court as an international criminal justice model enjoying the support of 2/3 of the United Nations. This support is worth remembering in the important work to be continued in international criminal jurisprudence and in the reinforcement of institutional resilience in the court's mandate. I thank you.
I thank you for your statement. And the next speaker is Her Excellency Ms. Anne Derwin, Ambassador of Ireland to the Netherlands. You have the floor, Excellency.
Thank you, Madam President. Ireland associates itself with the statement delivered on behalf of the European Union. At the outset, I must express Ireland's gratitude to the officials at the Court and the Presidency of the Assembly for their tireless work in increasingly difficult circumstances. I would like to congratulate you, Madam President, on the completion of your first year as ASP President, as well as the judges who have recently taken up their roles this year. Ireland notes that the Court's considerable workload has continued throughout 2024. Notable progress has been made both in the courtroom and across its investigative activities. This activity is both a sign of a maturing court and of the increased demand for global justice. The ICC can count on Ireland's steadfast support as it continues to pursue its important mandate. Madam President, it cannot be denied that the challenges we are facing are daunting. Over the last number of years, the Court has been subjected to many threats and attacks, from cybersecurity incidents to intimidation of elected officials. Now we once more face the threat of sanctions against the Court, having potentially devastating impacts on the operations of the Court. Ireland categorically condemns any attempt to interfere with the work of the Court as an attack against the international rule of law. We reaffirm our strong commitment to the Court and underline our confidence in it. As states parties, each of us has consciously assumed the mantle of guardian of the Rome Statute, and this is our court. It is incumbent upon us to support the ICC, even when it may be politically inconvenient for us to do so. A key aspect of this support is carrying out our obligations to cooperate with the court in accordance with the statute. Without such cooperation, the court will essentially cease to function. Justice is not an à la carte menu. We cannot support some investigations and then publicly condemn others. We cannot choose to adhere to our obligations under the Rome Statute when it suits us and ignore them when it does not. We cannot claim to care about victims and then invite perpetrators into our house. Madam President, if the Court is to deliver on the important mandate states parties have bestowed upon it, we must ensure that it is sufficiently resourced. Ireland calls on the Assembly to agree a budget that is fit for purpose and enables the Court to both deliver justice for victims and to navigate the current tumultuous environment it finds itself in. This is a key moment for the Court, and we must give it the resources that it needs. In particular, we stress the importance of allocating sufficient resources to ensure the security of the Court and its officials. A healthy work environment is essential for a well-functioning Court. The Court's staff work under increasing pressure at the coalface of international justice. They deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. Any allegation of harassment, discrimination, or abuse of authority must naturally be investigated promptly, independently, and fairly, in line with the Court's zero-tolerance policy. Madam President, real justice cannot be achieved without the meaningful participation of those most affected by the crimes being prosecuted. Victims are at the heart of the Rome Statute framework. Ireland commends the work of the Trust Funds for Victims in delivering tangible reparative justice to victims, their families, and their communities. We wish the newly elected directors of the Trust Fund, including Ambassador Kevin Kelly of Ireland, the very best as they embark on their new terms. Ireland has been a long-standing contributor to the Trust Fund for Victims. Today, I am pleased to announce that Ireland will make a €750,000 voluntary contribution for the years 2025 to 2027. We encourage all states to consider supporting its work, especially as the need to fund reparation awards increases over the coming years. Madam President, Ireland looks forward to the review conference on the crime of aggression, which will be held in 2025. We encourage all state parties to actively engage in the proposals for amending the crime of aggression. We consider this conference to be an opportunity to bring the ICC's jurisdiction over the crime of aggression into line with the other Rome Statute crimes. The review conference is also an important platform to renew our commitment to the Rome Statute framework and to underline the importance of the ICC in the system of international criminal justice. Despite the challenges that the court faces, we have reason to look towards the future with optimism. We see this in the recent growth in the court's membership. This year, we welcomed Armenia as the 124th state party, and we look forward to Ukraine becoming a full member of the court next month. We hope that their efforts inspire more states to join the world's first permanent court to prosecute international crimes so that together we can end impunity forever. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you for your statement. And the next speaker is Mr. Jorge Corrales, attaché at the Embassy of Panama in the Netherlands. You have the floor.
Señora Presidenta de la Asamblea.
Madam President of the Assembly, Excellencies, delegates, representatives from civil society, ladies and gentlemen. Madam President, first of all, allow me to congratulate you and to recognize the work you've carried out this year, leading the work towards this 23rd session of the Assembly of State Parties. We want to highlight the work carried out by the Vice Presidents in The Hague and New York. Excellent Madam Kasanga, Ambassador from Poland, and His Excellency Mr. Kanu, Ambassador from Sierra Leone. To the President of the Court, Her Excellency Judge Akane, Excellency Prosecutor Khan, and the Registrar Zavala, as well as to the entire staff of this court, we wish to extend our thanks for being part of this great team that promotes international justice. Madam President, Panama wishes to reaffirm its commitment with peace at a national, regional, and global level, and we reject any act of war. The government of Panama reiterates its firm conviction in the principles of multilateralism and an international order based on international law, the rule of law, and that promotes justice globally. We reaffirm once again our commitment to the Rome Statute. Panama supports firmly the International Criminal Court. We support its officials, its staff, and all those who cooperate with it. Protecting the integrity of the court, including its independence at a judiciary and procedural level, is essential for it to complete its mission. The Rome Statute represents an international commitment to put an end to impunity for international crimes that threaten peace, security, and the well-being of our world. The court has the essential obligation to make authors accountable and to impart justice to all victims equally. The Republic of Panama wants to take advantage of this Assembly of State Parties to express its concern regarding the unjustified delay with respect to the processing of the case regarding atrocious crimes and that have been committed and that continue to be committed in Venezuela. We express our profound disagreement with the delays in investigations by the prosecutor, despite the clear breaches of human rights in Venezuela, especially on the basis of the corrupt election of the 28th of July 2024. Having heard the statement of the prosecutor in this room, we would encourage him to resume the case and to process it with the same speed with which other cases have been addressed. The human rights of the Venezuelan people have the same standing as those of the people of other parts of the world. Therefore, we reject in the firmest of terms any actions or omissions that aim to block the transparent processing and efficient addressing of these cases involving the atrocities in Venezuela. Panama makes an appeal to state parties that have the collective responsibility to support the actions of the court, that we move forward to address the Venezuelan case, guaranteeing that the principle of universal justice be a reality for all the Venezuelans and all victims of crimes against humanity. All victims deserve the same access to justice. Madam President, this year's session is being held at a time in which the court is under considerable pressure. The safety of the court has to be a priority, as well as that of its officials and staff. We need to look at preventative safety measures as well as cybersecurity. All state parties need to contribute to the strategic plan of the court and to unite our efforts to promote universality, to strengthen complementarity, and to explore innovative ways for cooperation. We welcome the Republic of Armenia as a state party to the Rome Statute, as well as we welcome Ukraine that deposited its instrument of ratification in October. Madam President, considerations regarding geographical representation and gender balance at all levels of the organization, as well as the understanding of having the different legal systems throughout the world represented, are essential for the work of the court. Our delegation recognizes the financial needs that the court has so as to be able to fulfill its operations and accomplish its mission. We applaud the ongoing work of His Excellency Ambassador Rodriguez from Guatemala as regards the budget. We recognize the challenges involving satisfying the wills of state parties, keeping in mind the successive increases of the last years, as well as the global complicated financial context and how it impacts national budgets. Madam President, to end, we would appeal to all state parties to redouble efforts to intensify our joint work and to continue to act in a coherent way with the principles and provisions established in the Rome Statute. This would be so as to strengthen international justice and to guarantee its full respect. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement. And the next speaker is His Excellency Mr. Konstantin Stefanov Dimitrov, Ambassador of Bulgaria to the Netherlands.
Thank you very much. Good to see you again, Madam. Ladies and gentlemen, Madam President, distinguished members of the Court, the Republic of Bulgaria fully aligns itself with the statement delivered by the representative of Hungary on behalf of the European Union and would like to provide some additional remarks in its national capacity. I'd like to begin by congratulating President Tomoko Akane, the Vice Presidents, and the new President of the Assembly of States Parties, Ms. Päivi Kaukoranta, on their appointment. We'd also like to congratulate the judges elected during the last session of this Assembly. My country supports the Court's contributions to promoting the rule of law. The ICC is a central pillar in the international rules-based order and the international criminal justice system. The role of the International Criminal Court is more important than ever now, when the basic principles of international law are often disregarded, to put it very mildly. The significant increase in the judicial and investigative activities of the Court in the past year confirmed the need for accountability around the world and the relevance of the ICC. It is crucial that the independence of the Court be fully respected and its integrity be preserved from intimidation and pressure against the juridical institution, its officials, and those cooperating with it. Earlier this year, more than 90 states parties, including the Republic of Bulgaria, issued a joint statement in support of the independence and impartiality of the ICC. Considering the court's crucial role in the fight against impunity for the most serious international crimes, my country believes that the court must remain true to its mandate to safeguard its legitimacy, ensure its effectiveness, and guarantee fair and impartial proceedings. We firmly oppose any attempt for the instrumentalization and the politicization of the court. We expressed a great concern in regard to the attacks and threats against the court, against elected officials, personnel, and those cooperating with the ICC. The ability of the International Criminal Court to fully fulfill its mandate in great consistency in all situations is fundamental to its continued legitimacy. The ICC remains a court of last resort. Complementarity of jurisdiction is at the core of ICC's mandate, and states have the primary responsibility to investigate and prosecute the perpetrators of atrocity crimes. Without support and cooperation from the states parties, the court won't be able to overcome the challenges it faces nor tackle impunity. We welcome Armenia's recent ratification of the Rome Statute and Ukraine's deposition of its instrument of ratification at the end of October this year. The universalization of the Rome Statute remains a critical factor in the fight against impunity for the most serious crimes. Taking into consideration the continuous increase in the workload of the court, adequate budget resources are crucial for the proper functioning of the court. We join others in calling upon states in arrears to settle their outstanding contributions. We commend the progress made in the review process of the Rome Statute system. We encourage the ICC and states parties to continue engaging in the implementation of the recommendations of the independent expert review. Victims of international crimes all around the world turn to the ICC as their best and often last hope for justice and redress. Bulgaria supports the focus on victims' rights and participation promoted by the court. We were pleased to provide additional voluntary funding to the Trust Fund for Victims. Madam President, now the international rules-based order is increasingly challenged, the International Criminal Court remains a beacon of hope for maintaining the rule of law. By holding the perpetrators of the most serious crimes of concern to the international community accountable, not only does the court deliver justice, but it also contributes to achieving sustainable peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your statement. And the next speaker is His Excellency Mr. Norbert Mao, Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs of Uganda. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
The President of the Assembly of State Parties, heads of delegations and representatives of state parties, honorable judges, the prosecutor, the registrar, and other principals of the ICC, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Madam President, on behalf of my delegation and my country, I take this opportunity to congratulate you and the other principals of the court for successfully conducting the business of this assembly. Madam President, we look back at 1998 when nations gathered in Rome to establish the ICC and note that the mood could not have been more optimistic then. The Berlin Wall had collapsed. Nelson Mandela was released from prison and apartheid defeated. We witnessed the Security Council creating the ad hoc international criminal tribunals for the former Yugoslavia and Rwanda, respectively. A shocked international community, alert to the manifestations of impunity and gross human rights violations, responded with mechanisms to defeat it. The Special Court for Sierra Leone and the extraordinary chambers in the courts for Cambodia were also created to respond to global catastrophes. Madam President, today we meet in a totally different atmosphere. A polarized world exudes messages of justice a la carte with no hesitation. There appears to be no ignominy in identifying ourselves as us and them. What is good for the goose is no longer good for the gander. It appears that we have invented a new tango which no longer takes two to tango. This gathering must answer one fundamental question. Have we lost the momentum of the 26 years when we could speak with one voice? It has never been more urgent than now to return to the basics and reflect on why we started this journey at all. To do this, let's state the obvious. No one must be above the law. The Rome Statute must be implemented to deliver justice for all. We cannot allow the court to be used to settle scores, especially by non-state parties. We, the peoples of the world, must be all of us, not a chosen few. We cannot afford to pick and choose who deserves justice immediately and whose situation must wait. By the end of this session, we must determine how we trace our steps back to our original agenda as we, the peoples of the world, as reflected in the preamble to the Rome Statute. Madam President, all lives matter, and we must move from rhetoric to practice. All situations must be accorded the same treatment. The Rome Statute is a set menu, and there is no room for a la carte. It's justice for all, and we must leave no one behind. Madam President, I now turn on how we can boost the trust fund for victims. As the first country to make a referral to this court, Uganda welcomes the court's largest reparations order to date for 52.4 million euros in the Dominic Ongwen case. This money will benefit more than 40,000 victims. By all measures, this is the largest number of victims ever to be considered for reparations. We are grateful to the Trust Fund for Victims, the Office of Public Counsel for Victims, the Victims Participation and Reparation Section, the Kampala ICC Field Office, and all partners who have cooperated with the government of Uganda in reaching out to the victims and affected communities to enable them meaningfully participate in the process. Madam President, our expectations regarding the Ongwen reparations decision have been moderated by the knowledge that the Trust Fund for Victims coffers, even when fully emptied, would not accommodate all the victims. We are grateful for the special appeal that the TFV launched in June to boost this fund. We acknowledge the earmarked contributions received from several state parties for victims of gender-based crimes. However, we need to do more. Within our 124 state parties are 10 or even more state parties for whom 5 million euros would not inflict a colossal dent in their humanitarian budget. The easiest way of getting there is having those 10 states do the needful. This would go a long way in implementing the Rome Statute's most applauded innovation of putting victims at the center of the court's work. Such an effort must not stop with the Ongwen reparations, but the only way we can move from symbolism and tokenism to proper reparations is when we deliberately choose to give more to TFV. Incidentally, this amount is a mere fraction of what military interventions often require. This is doable, provided we view all victims as equally deserving of justice. Madam President, I turn now to the sticky subject of the independence, transparency, and accountability of the court. I join you and all those who have called for the protection of the court and those cooperating with it against threats and attacks. No elected official or court staff must ever again lose sleep for being unfairly targeted for simply doing his or her work. The call to protect staff from threats and attacks is, in our view, a double-edged sword. As the Assembly continues to promote effective cooperation between state parties and the court, elected officials and staff must also do their part to act above reproach. One area to watch out for is in the manner in which heads of organs make use of Article 116. Reliance on Article 116 to establish targeted trust funds must not be a gateway for triggering the old adage, he who pays the piper calls the tune. Politicizing the court is the fastest way we can destroy its integrity and legitimacy. We reiterate the need for a uniform approach to dealing with crisis situations. If organizing a fundraising event is the norm, then it must be organized for all situations without exceptions. As co-facilitators with Ambassador Dr. Greg French of Australia for the Complementarity and Gender-Based Crimes Working Group, we would like to register our gratitude for the mutual cooperation, hard work, and level of dedication devoted to implementing our mandate. Madam President, Uganda is also the facilitator for Geographical Representation and Gender Balance Working Group. While we note the achievements registered in the implementation of the recommendation of the internal expert review in this regard, more still needs to be done to make the ICC a safe place to work for all genders and nationalities. In particular, we call for the recruitment of more women in P4 and above. Madam Speaker, allow me to conclude by reiterating Uganda's continued and wholehearted support for the court and by wishing everyone here great deliberations. Thank you.
I thank you for your statement. And the next speaker is Mr. Tobias Schell, Head of Legal Department, Minister of Foreign Affairs and European Affairs, Defense, Cooperation and Foreign Trade of Luxembourg. You have the floor.
Madam President, Luxembourg fully endorses the statement of the European Union. Here, I would merely wish to share some considerations in my national capacity. I would like to begin by congratulating you, Madam President of the Assembly, and congratulate the new President of the Court, Madam Tomoko Akane, as well as the judges elected at the last session of the Assembly. Luxembourg wishes all of you a great amount of success, and you can count on our steadfast support. Luxembourg remains an ardent defender of the International Criminal Court. The court is an indispensable institution in our fight against impunity and in our efforts to foster an international order based on the rule of law. By contributing to the respect for international criminal humanitarian law and the rule of law, the court translates into concrete terms our commitments to a rules-based international order. Luxembourg pledges to continue to support and defend the principles and values enshrined in the Rome Statute and to preserve the integrity of the court. International Criminal Court is of capital importance to guarantee that those responsible for the most serious crimes are held to account and in order to administrate justice to the victims. And the victims should be the center of all of our efforts. And this is why Luxembourg has joined Chile, Mexico, Costa Rica, France, and Spain to refer to the Office of the Prosecutor a situation in Afghanistan where the rights of women and girls are getting more and more violated, and we would request that the prosecutor take this into account in his investigation, which was open, or in the investigation that was opened in 2020, where we see this flagrant deterioration of the plight of women. We also make sure that the court can face the challenges of threats, intimidation, and pressure, which have had a negative impact on its security. Luxembourg stands firmly opposed to any attempt to discredit the court or to hinder its work, and we condemn any threat, attack, or political interference, including sanctions or measures that would have a similar effect against the court, its staff, or those who cooperate with the court. The court, as well as its officials and its staff, must carry out their mandate and their professional duties as an international judicial body comprised of international civil servants without being intimidated. And Luxembourg supports the court in its efforts to strengthen its resilience, and in particular to protect it against cyber attacks. Being a state party to the Rome Statute does not offer us a pick-and-choose option. As state parties, we are duty-bound to uphold all of our commitments and all of the obligations that fall to us from the statute. And this is why we would call on all states to cooperate fully with the court. In carrying out the mission that it has been entrusted with, the court relies on the cooperation of states in order to make sure that those responsible for the most serious crimes can be held to account. For its part, Luxembourg upholds the decisions of the court and shall apply all of its obligations under the Rome Statute. The current number of investigations opened by the court has never been so high. The workload is constantly rising for the court, and we have to be aware of the fact that quality international justice requires adequate means. It's up to us, and it is important that at this session of the Assembly that we adopt a budget for 2025 that will provide the court with the resources it needs in order to face the rising demands for accountability in an extremely volatile climate. And this budget should also make it possible to cover the crying need to make investments in security in order to preserve the integrity of the institution and prevent it against possible attacks. We call on all states to give serious consideration to this additional budget effort that will make it possible to ensure the perennity of the court. We should not and never forget the victims of these most heinous crimes. They have suffered the most, and it's impossible to erase their suffering, but the Trust Fund for Victims does offer them reparations and assistance, both to them and their families. Luxembourg encourages the state's party to continue lending support to the fund. Luxembourg also hails the role of civil society, which has been so active in establishing the court in the first place, and that continues to defend the independent and impartial mandate of the court. The universality of the Rome Statute is of paramount importance. Luxembourg is pleased to see that Armenia has become a new state party. We also congratulate Ukraine on having ratified the Rome Statute, including the Kampala amendments on the crime of aggression. As of the 1st of January 2025, the number of states parties shall have risen to 125. Luxembourg calls on all states that have not yet done so to ratify the Rome Statute and all of its amendments. We support the review of the Kampala amendments with a view to aligning the competence of the court to cover the crime of aggression, aligning it with its jurisdiction that exists for the other crimes defined in the statute. Madam President, the court is at a crossroads. It's something that is our shared responsibility to make sure that the court has the necessary support in order to address current challenges and future challenges. Luxembourg stands firmly committed to continuing to cooperate with all partners in order to strengthen international criminal justice and to make sure that the work of the court can proceed and prosper. Thank you. Thank you very much for your statement.
His Excellency Mr. Agustin Vasquez Gomez, Ambassador of El Salvador to the Netherlands. You have the floor.
Madam President, Excellencies, officials of the court, distinguished observers, representatives of civil society, dear friends, one and all. El Salvador, Madam President, would like to congratulate you on your election to the Assembly of States Parties of the Rome Statute. We reiterate our full confidence in your leadership, as well as in the expertise of the other members of the Bureau and the Vice Presidents. I would like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to Her Honor Tomoko Akane on her election to the presidency of the International Criminal Court. We trust in her ability to guide the court with efficiency in keeping with the guidelines of the Rome Statute, and we also will support her in carrying out all of her administrative tasks if possible. We would call on the international community to step up its efforts in order to find peaceful solutions based on dialogue and diplomacy. We strengthen the need to strengthen multilateral mechanisms that guarantee peace and long-term stability. We reiterate our commitment to an international order that is both fair and just. Since we acceded to the statute in 2016, El Salvador has stated time and again that these most serious crimes should not go unpunished. It's essential for these crimes to be judged in national courts and as a complementary manner in the ultimate, final instance in the ICC with the proper accountability in keeping with everyone's commitment to international justice. The vision that we have is not just to punish those guilty, but more importantly, to protect victims, to rebuild communities, and restore the social fabric. We would urge that the court and the Trust Fund for Victims to continue carrying out their mandates in addressing the needs of communities and individuals. This is not just a moral imperative, it's also something that strengthens the court's legitimacy. Universality of the Rome Statute is something that is also as essential as it's always been. We would then again call on all the states that have done so yet to become full members of this international criminal justice system that protects rights and provides for accountability. This would enhance the legitimacy of the court and would also enhance the deterrent effect when it comes to impunity. We welcome the prosecutor's opening of a special fund for bringing in more people who are underrepresented from in the staff, including people from Latin America and the Caribbean. We would look forward to providing our own contributions to the court's work in protecting international law and human rights. The participation of professionals from our region would also make it possible for our national authorities to have a better understanding of the work of the court, benefiting from its jurisprudence, its case law, and its methods. We are grateful to the facilitators on issues such as complementarity, and in particular the Ambassador of Uganda and the Ambassador of Australia. Complementarity between the court and national bodies is critical if we are to enhance the visibility of the court and to make sure that states parties introduce all of the measures at the international level in order to provide for mutual legal assistance, protection of victims, etc. We are also grateful to the Ambassador of Guatemala in leading the discussions when it comes to the need to have a zero nominal growth in international bodies, which is our national policy. This approach reflects our country's respect for the court and its staff, and at the same time, the trust that we place in the capacity of the court to manage these funds and use them efficiently. Lastly, Madam President, we would urge that the court step up its efforts in improving its institutional efficacy, ignoring or doing away with redundant work, overlap, etc. And we would also continue to urge the court to make sure that there is a healthy workplace culture for all those working within the court. We believe that the court should be given all the means it needs in order to fulfill its mandate and anything that it can do to enhance its legitimacy and credibility. Thank you.
And thank you for this statement, And the next speaker is Ms. Kristi Land, Director General of the Legal Department of the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of Estonia. You have the floor.
Thank you. Madam President, distinguished delegates, Estonia aligns itself with a statement made on behalf of the European Union and its member states and adds following remarks. We would like to congratulate the President of the Assembly, the President and Vice Presidents, and 6 new judges of the International Criminal Court and wish them every success in their work. The role of the ICC in maintaining the rules-based international order and ensuring accountability for the most serious crimes is as important now as it was more than 20 years ago when the ICC was established. The ICC has worked in a challenging environment, and this year is no exception. We, the states, cannot leave the ICC alone in combating impunity. The ICC can only fulfill its mandate if the states parties cooperate with the court. Respect for international law and maintaining peace and security is a common duty of the international community. Just 2 weeks ago, we marked 1,000 days since Russia's illegal, full-scale war of aggression against Ukraine. We count on the ICC to ensure justice and accountability for atrocity crimes committed by Russia in Ukraine. We appreciate that the investigation in the situation of Ukraine has moved forward, and the ICC has issued 3 sets of arrest warrants, including against Vladimir Putin. All states parties have to cooperate with the ICC, execute the outstanding arrest warrants, and surrender individuals to the court regardless of their official position or state of origin. Non-compliance prevents the court from exercising its functions and seriously undermines the ICC and the international legal order. In this context, we urge all states to refrain from any action contrary to the Rome Statute. Estonia continues to support the ICC. We were one of the first countries to second national experts to the prosecutor's office, and our competent authorities assisted the ICC when series of cyber attacks were directed against the ICC. We also contributed to the special fund for security to address the needs of the cybersecurity systems. We hope that the ICC is now better prepared to respond to possible future cyber attacks and call all state parties to continue their support and assistance. The budget of the ICC for 2025 should allow the court to efficiently fulfill its tasks. We encourage all states to make payments in time and eliminate their arrears without further delays. Madam President, we commend the work of the Trust Fund in offering compensations and rehabilitation to victims, their families, and communities, and for having completed the implementation of the reparations program in the Katanga case. For many years, Estonia has been a regular donor of the Trust Fund, and we would like to repeat our call for all states and other stakeholders to support the Trust Fund. While the universal acceptance of the Rome Statute remains a challenge, we are glad that Armenia has become the 124th state party, and Estonia also warmly congratulates Ukraine for becoming the 125th state party on 1st January. Estonia calls on all states that have not done yet so to ratify the Rome Statute and its amendments. We are willing to find ways to close the accountability gap for the crime of aggression. Estonia has been a firm supporter of Ukraine in establishing a special tribunal for the crime of aggression to hold Russia's political and military leadership accountable for the crime of aggression. At the same time, we are looking forward for the ICC to have jurisdiction over the crime of aggression on the same grounds as over other international crimes of the Rome Statute. Time is ripe for the next step, for the review of the amendments on the crime of aggression as foreseen in the Kampala amendments. Estonia supports organization of a review conference in New York in July 2025. Substantial and successful review process and enlargement of ICC's jurisdiction needs, first of all, political support that the current Assembly can already express. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement. And the next speaker is His Excellency Mr. Hector Constant Rosales, Ambassador, Permanent Representative of Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela to the OPCW, ICC, and other institutional organizations and courts. You have the floor, Excellency.
Gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you, Madam President. President of the Court, Vice Presidents, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I bring with me the greetings of the people of Venezuela, along with our President, Nicolas Maduro. Venezuela reiterates its commitment to the spirit of the Rome Statute. We recognize that the most serious crimes that are of concern to the international community constitute a peace to international peace and security and human well-being. We must recall that all states must exercise their full jurisdictions in addressing the crimes and those responsible for them. We are firm in our condemnation of genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. We reject the ongoing Israeli aggression against Palestinians, in which 44,000 people have lost their lives, many of whom were women and children. This is something that has no precedent in contemporary times. Venezuela would call on the international community to step up its efforts in order to bring about an effective and immediate ceasefire and proper accountability. In keeping with our Constitution, Venezuela is a democratic state based on the rule of law and justice, based on the higher values of freedom, life, justice, equality, solidarity, democracy, social responsibility, in general, the preeminence of human rights. And it's because of this that we've done everything we can to protect and promote the rights of Venezuelans. Nonetheless, my delegation would state that as of 2014, Venezuela has been a victim of a systematic campaign of political and media destabilization, which has given rise to a huge amount of suffering. The most recent violent acts took place in the presidential elections of the 20th of July this year. And once again, people have tried to falsify perceptions of reality, alleging violations of human rights in Venezuela. And what they've done is denied the testimony of those who have claimed that these violations have been carried out at the hands of other people. And in the event, Venezuela faces more than 900 unilateral coercive measures imposed on it by the United States, and this has had a huge impact on our economy and on the human rights of Venezuela, as has been reflected in a variety of independent reports by the United Nations. For example, in 2022 alone, the damage caused by these criminal measures against my country has been estimated to land at $642 billion. This is higher than the international reserves of all of the international reserves of all of the remaining South American countries. Madam President, we presented to the Office of the Prosecutor of Venezuela, too, which tries to looks at those who were responsible for these crimes and to try to do something about these illegal sanctions against my country, which have had a huge impact on infant mortality, adult health figures, etc., because our people have been denied access to healthcare, medicine, and even educational opportunities. And so we would hope that this preliminary investigation would be revived and that the investigations can move forward. We do not understand that there are double standards when it comes to unilateral coercive measures. This is why we've denounced the threat of sanctions against the court, and illegal sanctions against the peoples that suffer should also be dismissed out of hand. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in the event Venezuela is firmly committed to the ICC on the basis of the principle of complementarity, which is set forth in the statute, in keeping with international law and, of course, our inalienable right to Venezuelan sovereignty. Here, we would hail the work of the OTP's the work done by the OTP, in which has led to the development of a bilateral memorandum of understanding. During the last visit, the prosecutor opened a prosecutor's office in Caracas, and there's a work plan to focus on a variety of steps that we can introduce in order to strengthen our national capacity, for which we are grateful. Madam President, to conclude, Venezuela stands in favor of a world that is based on the principles of human rights and the protection and promotion of human rights and international law. The Libertador, Simón Bolívar, said that we will bring in a nation where governments will protect innocence, humanity, and peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your statement. And our last speaker for this morning session is Her Excellency Ms. Alina Orozan, Director General for Legal Affairs of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Romania. You have the floor, Excellency.
Thank you very much, Madam President. At the outset, I would just like to say that Romania fully aligns itself to the statement delivered on behalf of the European Union and its member states, and would like to add some remarks in its national capacity. 26 years ago, the adoption of the Rome Statute represented a groundbreaking achievement for the international community and for the international law. It strengthened the system of international justice, and it significantly contributed to the promotion of the rule of law globally. Reminding at all times the rationale for creating the International Criminal Court fixed in the preamble of the Rome Statute, and I quote, "Mindful that during this century, millions of children, women, and men have been victims of unimaginable atrocities that deeply shock the conscience of humanity, and recognizing that such grave crimes threaten the peace, security, and well-being of the world, we must remain determined to put an end to impunity for the perpetrators of these crimes, and in this way to contribute to the prevention of such crimes and to the building of a world free of such atrocities." Today, in a world marred by increasingly complex armed conflicts displaying a flagrant disregard for international humanitarian law, the International Criminal Court is a hope. A hope to the victims that they will not remain victims forever, and for a principled international rule of law which cannot possibly tolerate impunity or no action for such egregious, inhuman crimes, no matter the personal circumstances of the authors. A hope that humanity within humans is not lost. It is therefore our duty to reaffirm in these troubled times our unwavering support for the International Criminal Court and for its mission to the benefit of the entire international community. Romania fully trusts in the independent and impartial ability of the ICC to bring justice in all situations under its consideration and contribute to the peace efforts in these regions. Madam President, during the last years, the court and its officials faced increasing attacks ranging from political pressure and security concerns to intimidation and threats, including threats of coming under sanctions. My delegation is deeply concerned by any measure that may affect ICC's independence and impartiality and its capacity to fulfill its mandate in accordance with its founding treaty, the Rome Statute. Romania will continue to stand by the court and defend it from any attempts to undermine it and its activity. We would also like to express, not least, our gratitude to the officials working under these dire circumstances. In fulfilling its mandate, the court depends on state cooperation. States must remain committed to the fight against impunity by ensuring full and prompt cooperation with the ICC. An enhanced cooperation regime helps the court in carrying out its work effectively. Instances of non-cooperation not only hamper the court's activity, but also challenge the credibility of the Rome Statute system. Achieving universality of the Rome Statute remains, from our perspective, the most powerful preventive approach to mass atrocities. Romania welcomes Ukraine's ratification of the Rome Statute, becoming thus a new state party to the ICC as of the 1st of January next year. The step taken by the Ukrainian authorities carries a particular symbolism, considering that Ukraine and the Ukrainian people are first and foremost victims of aggression and of the crime of aggression, which triggered the commission of all other crimes under the jurisdiction of the court and for which the ICC has been already seized. Ukraine's audacity, proved also in relation with the International Criminal Court, is a testimony to the fact that the force of law is and must remain the only approach to violations of international law, and especially to the illegal use of force. We should use this momentum to reinforce our efforts in promoting the universality of the Rome Statute and in encouraging the widest possible participation in it. We should be innovative in demarches to that end and in making the court better known to regular citizens, and in order to generate a bottom-up movement that would press for participation in the Rome Statute system. Not least, as the court's workload continues to increase while finding itself facing severe challenges, we must provide the necessary financial and logistical resources to the ICC to preserve its functionality. The review conference held in Kampala decided to review the amendments on the crime of aggression 7 years after the beginning of the court's exercise of jurisdiction, in other words, next year. Romania is open to engaging with other countries on ways to consolidate the jurisdiction of the court over the crime of aggression and align its jurisdiction over the crime with that over the crime of genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. Before concluding, I would like to express our profound gratitude to non-governmental organizations and civil society in general working in this field for their tireless efforts in standing by the ICC and in supporting its activity. I will conclude my statement by recalling some well-known words of late Nuremberg Tribunal prosecutor Ben Ferenc, one of the most fervent supporters of the ICC, who said that there can be no peace without justice, no justice without law, and no meaningful law without a court to decide what is just and lawful under any given circumstance. This is the International Criminal Court. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your statement, and this brings us to the end of our list of speakers for this morning. I would like to thank all the speakers for their statements presented this morning and support pledged to the court, and also for the kind words addressed to the Presidency of the Assembly. We will convene to continue this agenda item this afternoon at 15 hours, and we will continue with statements from states parties. Our first speaker will be Undersecretary for Legal Affairs of the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of Denmark, Ms. Vibeke Pasternak Jørgensen. I would also like to thank interpreters for extending their interpretation services. And unless there are any requests for the floor, the meeting is adjourned.